Okay, the big news right now is that the Democrats and a handful of Republicans voted to block the government funding bill in the Senate. That gives Congress until 11:59 p.m. tomorrow to pass a package, or we face another government shutdown. I want to kind of put that vote into context. I want to talk about what that really means and how we want to approach our organizing, particularly when it comes to our Democratic electeds going forward. No, check that. Republican electeds too. If you have a Republican member of the House or senators, this video is still for you as well. Now, I got a little bit angry last night, both in a video and on Blue Sky, because it's so disheartening to hear that Senate Democrats basically have given away any strong demands to defund ICE or to defund DHS or to constrain Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol's illegal actions in any meaningful way. Senate Democrats did say they were united around blocking the funding package unless they got their list of 3 demands met. Originally, I think it was like 8 or 10 demands. They very quickly whittled it down to these 3 real lame ass, I called them weak sauce last night, weak sauce asks. And those are basically all of the things Cory Booker and a bunch of corporate establishment Democrats put out in their original, like, hey, we're mad at ICE, so we want them to wear body cameras, and we want them to cooperate with local law enforcement. We want them to not cover their faces and to have a uniform with their name and badge number on it. All of the very basic, like, oh, and please don't violate the 4th Amendment, and like, please have a warrant before you arrest somebody. And you might say, well, Angela, those are all very reasonable things to expect a law enforcement agency to do. Okay, but let me come back at you with this. As Azra Levin just said in the Indivisible What's the Plan call, Immigration and Customs Enforcement is not a law enforcement agency. First of all, they were a civil enforcement agency. Their job was not to enforce criminal penalties. Remember, just 23 years ago, it was customs. They were the customs agency, right? Like, are you bringing fruit into the country that you shouldn't? Are you bringing in boxes of cigarettes that you shouldn't without paying duties or whatever? But it's so much more than that. What ICE is now is a lawless gang of criminals who are violating the rights of Americans, who are inflicting a reign of terror, who are trampling all over the Constitution. And as Ezra so perfectly said, ICE has as much to do with law enforcement as the mafia has to do with waste management. They're a criminal enterprise, a violent paramilitary staffed by pardoned January 6th insurrectionists, Oath Keepers, and Proud Boys, violent men who have no interest in upholding your rights at all. In fact, they would more than love to hurt you, especially if you're a woman, especially if you are not white. But they'll do it to white men too. They are living out their violent, fatal action role play fantasies. That's why I call them flarpers. They are flarpers. And people are dying because of it. People are being beaten because of it. People are being put in concentration camps because of it. So when Democrats originally had this demand of like, hey, we're not going to vote for this funding package unless ICE is no longer allowed to shoot at moving vehicles or arrest American citizens, I was like, well, that's the bare fucking minimum, because ICE has never actually had jurisdictional authority over American citizens at all. And no member of law enforcement should be shooting at moving vehicles. It's in their own code. Jonathan Ross violated their own policy and intentionally murdered Renee Good in cold blood. So when Cory Booker said like, oh, we want them to wear body cameras, Jonathan Ross was filming her murder as he committed it. Body cameras ain't gonna do shit. So see, I got a little bit worked up last night over this. Like, y'all gave away just the most reasonable demands to settle for these 3 completely useless asks. And I think we have a right to be upset about that, especially when House Democrats overwhelmingly are saying not only defund ICE, but defund and dismantle ICE and DHS, which again, only 23 years old. They're not old enough to rent a car yet. There is huge popular support. More than 76% of Democrats support abolishing ICE. And I think it's something like, I'm sorry, I don't have the figure right in front of me. I think it's something like 47% of independents support abolishing ICE. So when we have Senate leadership who's not picking up that narrative, they are not upholding the will of their constituents, and they're also fucking not reading the room. So again, we have a right to be upset, but there's more to it than that. This vote today was really important. The fact that they were like, we want these 3 really weak ass demands, and if we're not going to get them, we're not going to vote for your funding package. And then they followed through. The vote was 45 to 55. Not only did the Democrats do what they said they were going to do, which was hold up this funding package, but a handful of Republicans joined them. 8 Republicans voted against this package that Donald Trump wanted funded. And please understand, the Democrats coming together to vote against this funding package less than 2 weeks ago, we couldn't get Chuck Schumer on the record at all. And Democrats gave every indication that they were going to let this funding package go through. They were not going to hold it up at all. They thought that there wasn't enough political capital to spend here, right? Because Senate Democrats, they're not really interested in doing what's right, those in power. They are far more interested in doing what is politically expedient for them. They're so hesitant. They won't do anything unless we push them really, really hard. And in particular, I keep saying this, but it's so true. We have to push the members of the House and we have to push the senators, and then they will push leadership. They're not going to take the impetus to push their leadership unless the power resides with the people. We are the ones who have to leverage that power. They're not going to do the right thing on their own. They're only going to do the right thing because we drag them kicking and screaming to do it. So the fact that less than 2 weeks ago, Chuck Schumer and the Senate Dems were going to let this go through, and we're like just fine with letting ICE continue their reign of terror, giving a funding bump to ICE as they're murdering Renee Good in the street. It wasn't until Alex Preddy was murdered, and even then it was like not really going to happen. It's because Minnesotans rose up in huge numbers. It's because of the Minnesota general strike, and it's because all of us in solidarity with our friends in Minnesota around the country gave overwhelming feedback to our elected officials that Republicans found a tiny bit of courage and decided to hold up this funding bill. That is a victory, and we need to mark it as such. There's a huge difference between pretending that we have a strong opposition leadership, that we have a cohesive opposition party in the United States, and that they will function with us as our allies. We can want that all day long, but that's not what we have at this point in time. We don't have that yet. And y'all, if we're going to win, we have to stop engaging in magical thinking. We have to stop living in a fantasy land. We have to work with the pieces that are actually on the board. We have to function in reality. And Chuck Schumer and the corporate establishment Democrats, the surrender Dems, y'all, they're not going to be the leaders that we need and the leaders that we deserve, but they are a known quantity, and so we have to use them as best we can. We have to leverage them as best we can to do the most good and to reduce the most harm. We can wish for different leadership all day long, but we cannot magically constitute it. Just like in the 2024 election, a lot of people wished that there were other people that were viable candidates on the ticket for president, but that's not what we actually had. We have to operate in reality. We have to work with what's in front of us, because if we spend all of our time frittering away all of our energy, wishing that something else was actually in front of us, that there were different pieces on the board that we could play with, and we're not going to be successful. We have to be pragmatic, and we also have to understand that small wins really matter. And that when we make moves in the right direction, when we start shifting the Overton window in the right direction, that's not going to happen in one giant leap, that these gentle nudges, these pushes actually make a lot of difference. It really matters for us. So no, we're not having Democratic leadership at this moment in time screaming abolish ICE. We weren't going to get that from Senate Democrats, no. But the fact that less than 2 weeks ago, they were going to let this funding package go through, and now all of a sudden it's hugely present in the consciousness of this country. This conversation is happening. Popular support is growing, and that's what we have to have: mass popular support for defunding and abolishing ICE and DHS. Without all of the people pushing, because that is where power resides, our elected officials are never going to make those changes. And now we have some room to keep building that momentum. So please understand, you helped make this happen. The power resides with you and your neighbor and the folks in your local organizing group. The power resides with us. Changed the outcome here. Democrats only moved because we made a giant stink. So what does that teach us? Hey, that's a little bit of a positive reinforcement feedback loop for us, right? We make a stink and they do something when they were going to do nothing. It's not enough. Okay, we need to make a bigger stink, a much bigger. And right now, I really want to encourage you to call your senators. I don't care which party they're in, especially if they're actually the 8 Republicans who voted against this funding package. I want you to call your senators and say, this is a good start, but it's not enough. I need you to make bigger moves. ICE needs to be defunded. ICE needs to be defunded. DHS needs to be dismantled. Thank you for voting against this package. I need a lot more from you. We want to give them their flowers when they do the right thing, and we have to keep pushing. We got to keep making that big stink. We got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Keep moving that Overton window over. until it becomes a very moderate, reasonable position to say, why the fuck are we having paramilitary violent gangs in our streets? Let's get rid of that. Let's defund that. And we have the privilege of driving that change. That comes from us.